Welcome, Nuno do Carmo, our co-chair, WSL co-chair, Fernando Rolnik. Welcome back, both of you, and it's a pleasure to have Nuno now working for Suse as a technical writer, Fernando now as a tech lead of a big bank, and I'm now cloud developer advocate for Microsoft. I think from our videos from a few months or a year ago, it's quite different. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you, Jorge. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having me, Jorge. Hey, Nuno, how are you?
That's great. That's great. And Nuno is coming back to talk about what Suse is doing, what you call Rancher Desktop, something that's growing very fast. I think it's already GA, version 1, 1.2, if I'm not wrong.
Exactly.
And yes, I'm very happy. I'm using myself since like the preview version. And
Nice.
all yours, Nuno. What do you bring to us today?
Okay, yes. So let me share the screen. You can see the screen here normally.
Yep.
So the first step then for anyone wanting to discover what is Rancher Desktop, and I will enter a little bit more in details just after during the demo. But the first step really is to go to rancherdesktop.io. And here you will have a video done by Matt Farina, which is our almost architect and engineer at Suse and Rancher, which is like a well of knowledge. So I just encourage you to look at the video and look at Matt Farina's work so far because it's amazing. And here on the page, forget now the top links, but you can see what Rancher Desktop is, where you can install it. So as you can see, you can install it on the Mac Apple Silicon, the Mac Intel, Windows, and Linux. And I think it was one, if not the first one, to have actually container/Kubernetes local management to be available on the 4 platforms, which is really like important for any developer outside. Then it explains a little bit what is Rancher Desktop. The goal was really first off, so the point of view from Rancher Desktop, and that's important compared to maybe other products, is that we wanted to make Kubernetes made simple, okay, with some container management, of course, but then the point of view from Suse and Rancher was to bring K3s in a really easy way to the developer on the local machine, okay? And here is the interface. We will check it after a little bit. And yeah, kind of, and we can run it with some tools. Here is a little bit of background. So on the left side, we can see the tools. So the CLIs, the command line interfaces that we are using. So Nerdctl or RDCTL, kubectl, Elm, and Docker. And we'll see a little bit more afterwards. Then, because of the technologies and let's say the platforms being a little bit different between Windows and then Mac/Linux also. So on Mac and Linux, we will use a VM or a micro VM created by Lima thanks to QEMU. And this micro VM really behaves actually like the Windows side, which is WSL2. That's important. Not WSL simple won't work, so you need WSL2 here, which is the micro VM on the Windows side. But these two here, these two technologies really work almost the same. Okay, the principles are quite the same. And once you do have, then all the virtualization and Rancher Desktop installed, so you can install it from GitHub here. So if I click here and you go to the Rancher Desktop 1.1, and here you can see you have the different options, okay, for the different platforms. Linux actually has two modes. I won't enter too much here today, but there's a app image, so you can just unzip it and just use it like that, or it's on a repo also. It's not here, I think, but you can have it if you are running typically OpenSUSE, or you can add your repos from OpenSUSE also. Then you will be able to install Rancher Desktop directly from the repository. Other than that, like the normal. So here, if I close this one and I open this one, so here I have already pre-installed Rancher Desktop. So the first page, or the first time that you connect, is quite simple, right? So it's split kind of in two. So you have the menus here, but we don't really care. So what we care is the menus here on the left, and then what is the content of the menus. So one thing that is really nice, for example, when we start here on this general page, is the check updates automatically. That is really always good. You can allow or disallow the collection of statistics, but again, it's to help also the developers know whatever it's best for like say bringing as a statistic for maybe some performance sometimes, something like that. So it can be really helpful typically with the error reports. Then from here, what I really like is that you have in the project links, you have the home page, so the one we were before, but we have directly a link to issues. So this one can allow you to actually click on it and it will open here, and you can open your issue whenever if you encounter one. Okay, that's important. And we have also a very active Rancher Desktop channel in the Slack of Rancher users. Okay, then the second link here is the Kubernetes settings. So again, by Kubernetes settings, remember we are running K3S, so the SUSE Rancher Kubernetes distro, if you want, kind of, or version. And this one, you can here select the versions that you want to use. So you have the latest, you have the stable one, and then if you have other distributions, you can always swap. It's this functionality here, I really like it because it allows developers or administrators independently to test some applications, some configurations against some different versions, okay, which is always cool if you really need to test if some configuration or an application still runs or will run in the future, let's say. Okay, the port, so it's this one is for the Kubernetes API ports, the one that for example kubectl will connect to is needed. And then here you have actually two options where you can enable or disable K3S, okay, as the Kubernetes, and then also traffic for the ingress and load balancer. Okay, so by default, when you install it, again, the point of view is that Kubernetes made easy, right? So they will be enabled. But from the version actually 1.0 to 1.1, there was a real, let's say, huge amount of requests to have actually these options potentially disabled because you want to use another ingress or load balancer, for example, or you want to use Rancher Desktop as a container management only. Okay, and we will enter a little bit after that. Then one thing that is quite unique to Rancher Desktop today is that you can run two container runtimes, either containerd or either docker/moby, okay, as the backend, as the container runtime. This is really, really cool. And we will have a small demo afterwards, so what is the difference. Okay. Then, and excuse
Nuno,
me, but yes, tell me.
Before you move it there, I mean, if someone, used Docker before Kubernetes, I think that's where you can just disable Kubernetes and pick your runtime using containerd or Docker, like a Docker daemon, not talking about like the whole Docker. It's just like the Docker runtime with the Docker CLI.
Exactly.
I think you probably can come back there, but if someone watching just want to use Docker, just disable the Kubernetes there and pick your runtime, and you can just use containers.
If you disable
fashion.
If you disable this Kubernetes, you use less resource from the computer, or this has an impact?
So, yes, I guess so, because anyway, Kubernetes means that you are also running a workload that Kubernetes needs to run, right? So you are running some containers that Kubernetes needs. So the moment that you, let's say, disable it, then all these containers exactly for the control plane will be stopped. So it means that you will have less load also. Again, remember, K3S at the very beginning was created with edge cases in mind. So edge can be a lot of things, right? It doesn't mean just small, tiny Raspberry Pis, but it runs there, right? So the idea of Kubernetes is to be really, or K3S is to be really, really light. So it can run in, let's say, worker nodes in some edge cases, like, I don't know, like the windmill, not the windmill, but the wind power, like éolienne in French, sorry. That's why I don't know the term, but like you have those ones, the Raspberry Pis, like, Alex Ellis, for example, or the creator of OpenFast, also created a lot of demos showcasing like how you can have like a very, let's say, rapid and tiny cluster in a sense, with a lot of Raspberry Pis, and the deployment was just that easy. And he created tools also for that. So, yeah, so K3S is really, really light. Okay, so K3S versus full or vanilla, what they call vanilla Kubernetes, it will be lower, okay? Again, lower in footprint. It doesn't mean that it lacks functionalities and features. It does not. K3S, it's a Kubernetes, okay? Fork, not even fork. I don't want to use the term fork actually, but it's optimized for smaller, let's say, workloads, or smaller footprints for Kubernetes workloads. Sorry, that's the whole phrasing here. But the thing is, like, everything that Kubernetes brings, K3S is able to. It doesn't bring all the, for example, third parties plugins, for example, or cloud providers by default. It does not mean that you cannot add it. Okay, but that's another discussion. Okay, but K3S is Kubernetes. Think like that. So if you need to deploy your application on Kubernetes, you can use K3S and can deploy it potentially on change into some Kubernetes vanilla server if really needed. Okay.
Yeah, and I always like to say that K3S is now like a CNCF project.
Also,
means that,
yes,
and it's also like a single binary. That's why it's consuming less memory, and it's always lighter than installing. If you compare with other solutions or other Kubernetes distributions, and saves a lot of memory and processing as well.
There's others, and we can name them, right? I mean, I work for Suse, but at the end of the day, we are all cloud native here. But if you take like K0S, for example, from Mirantis, it's also like a single binary trying to kind of be at the same level that K3S sometimes, but it does try to do something else. And then you have micro-Ks, for example, and other Kubernetes distributions. The only difference here, and that was a good point, thank you, Jorge, is that K3S is actually the only distribution that is in as a CNCF project other than Kubernetes itself. Okay, if you look at Kubernetes and distributions, K3s is the only one that has been, for now, accepted by the CNCF. Okay, so it means a lot. It means that really it's Kubernetes slim, if you want. But yeah, but if you let's say, if you disable Kubernetes, okay, it will need a restart of the application, but it will consume a little bit less. Yes, that was the initial question.
That's great. Let's go ahead. Let's see what's.
Yeah. So
exciting.
then containerd, dockerd, but we will have a look in a second. Then what I was about to say, so here, because I'm always messing with my computer, you know me, and you can see that I'm running on a Windows 11 dev. You cannot see that it's dev, but it's dev actually, dev build. The thing here right now, it's empty, but it should not. Okay, maybe if I restart it, it will work again. But you have WSL integration. Okay, again, we can name it, but like Docker Desktop did it. So you can tell that the tools, which is the ones that we saw just before in the page. If I take this page here again. Okay, remember Nerdctl, kubectl, Elm, Docker CLI. Actually, you can expose them to another WSL distribution. We will have a look about how it works. Okay. Then here you can, if needed, actually forward some ports directly, for example, from a container or from a service that will be running already. As you can see, there's a lot of things that I'm running here, but we will have a look afterwards what some of those are. But yeah, that's I was playing with Epinho, which is also another Suse projects, open source projects. You can see here linkerd and so on. But I'm not here to showcase the things, but it's just like you can forward ports directly from here. And another one that is really nice here. So now this image scanning here, the page will depend on which container runtime we are using. So here, image namespace, we can see like build kit, default, K8s, moby, because we are using containerd right now as the container runtime. So here in the namespace defaults, we have these two here, for example. And if I take Ubuntu, I can simply say like I want to delete it, or I can scan it. Okay. Now, if I go to k8s.io, now we can see actually the images that are running actually are uploaded inside Kubernetes namespace directly. Okay, so we are in another namespace, and here you can see that I have, of course, a lot more. Okay, so it's all the what I installed and everything. But let's get back to default here, and
Nuno,
here for yes,
I really like that scan, you know, and also the plus button that you can create like an image there.
Yep.
The only thing that you don't have, if you compare with Docker Desktop, will be like to run a container from there, to like select an image and run a container.
True. Yes.
But you can create an image from there, like you can build from the Docker file.
Yeah, exactly. So here you can tell like, okay, if you want to pull and insert this image inside the, let's say the cache registry, okay, that you have, or you can directly build it with like the tag, and you can build inside also. Okay. So here, what I wanted to show, however, is like the scan indeed. So here I can scan, and let's scan Ubuntu latest. So I already pulled it. So the scanning will be against what I already pulled. Okay. So we can see that we have like 2 mediums and 12 lows, which is all good. If I use another image, that was a question from someone, but if I scan it, here you can see that we have like, let's say 4 vulnerabilities discovered. Okay. And here, like that, you can have the scan. You can, let's say, play with it. I really never really entered here onto this page here, actually, to be totally sincere. But what I like is like, especially the K8s.io here. Initially, what Suse and Rancher did, it was like we had another tool called Kim, which is like Kubernetes images, I think, management, something like that. And this tool would build your image and push it inside the Kubernetes registry, okay, the internal registry. And these, when discussed like that, it's okay. You say like why or what for, right? So now think in terms of development. Let's say that you have an app and you containerize it. So normally what you will do is potentially push it to a registry, and then when you use kubectl or Kubernetes tools, you will pull it again. So here you have a huge shortcut that you just push your image to the internal registry. You add it directly. So whenever you are inside now, let's say using Kubernetes tools, what you will do is like, if you do like kubectl, I think it's like deploy or something like that, then it will call the image that is already pre-cached. So you win a lot of time and bandwidth, okay? There's again, edge cases like what we discussed before. There's these air gap situations. So air gap means like you do not have, let's say, you move something from a data center, from a server, from your machine to somewhere else, but this somewhere else doesn't have network, for example. Okay, so here you need to have all the batteries included. So if suddenly you don't have like network, or if you cut network before, like you could not like create your application and run it on Kubernetes, because you had this need to go to a registry. If you didn't have a local registry, right, like a normal person that has a registry on the web, so you have to go to the web, pull it, and you cannot do that. So here you have like this direct tunnel kind of, where you just push it to your registry directly. So this idea was really nice, and that was Kim. But then there's this tool called Nerdctl, and this one was also doing that. So instead of going, let's say, as a kind of fork all the time, what Suse and Rancher, let's say, management decided, and the developers from Rancher Desktop decided, it was like, okay, let's contribute to Nerdctl, because that's definitely one CLI that will become kind of the default in the very near future, my guess, if not already. And so just contribute there. And that's actually one of the main developers of Rancher Desktop, is also now contributor for Nerdctl. So again, open source, helping others. This one worked. Instead of having two tools doing the same thing, let's join forces and create a better tool. And that's what I really liked here, the idea, the concept. Okay.
Yeah, that's very nice, because yeah, netctl is part of Containerd, and yep. Containerd is a CNCF project as well. Then you make sure that will be, you know, like a project that many companies are going to be maintaining.
Yes, indeed. And again, I like the power of open source, but I even like it more when open source comes together instead of, let's say, kind of forking all the time. But that's a private opinion here. All right. So finally, troubleshooting. Whenever if you have an issue and you need help from Slack or from the issues that we showed, you can see the logs here. So if I click show logs on Windows, it will open then my how do you say my Explorer, and then here you will have different logs, and of course, as a good option always is like if you're really stuck and you don't want really to reinstall right away, you can always press the factory reset. The factory reset will reset all the settings and the workloads that you have, while reset Kubernetes will just impact K3S workloads. Okay, so there's two buttons. I like that. So you do have really the option one, which is like soft restart of Kubernetes only, okay? Or you have the hard reset, which is the factory reset, which impacts the whole Rancher desktop. And of course, last case, if nothing works, you can always uninstall, reinstall, for example. Okay?
Yep.
So that was nice theory, but in Azuretar, we are not here about theory. We are here about what we can do, really.
Demo.
Exactly. So here, just before we started, I just ensured that I'm in the right part with my context for Kubernetes. And for example, here I have Docker, and let me do a Docker info, for example. Or actually, it will be Docker version. Would have been better, but anyway, it will draw, or it will output an error right now, okay? Because Docker is not running.
You're
Remember,
using containerd. You have to use Nerdctl, right?
Exactly. So here, however, if I do a Nerdctl info, here you can see that now I'm running something, and I have a server version. I have a storage driver called overlay fs, and I have cgroup fs. So coming from Windows here, and I will stay on PowerShell right now, right? But coming from Windows, these terminologies here might not be familiar, especially even if I didn't really work with it with Docker neither. What it does, however, as you can see here, is that operating system is not Windows, is Rancher Desktop WSL distribution. So what we have here is, remember the schema here, okay? We do have something running, K3S, and containerd or dockerd on WSL2. So here, if I do Rancher desktop cat etc os release, for example, I will see that I have my name here, which we can see it here also. And then other information that it's not really, let's say, relevant for us right now, but it's just like I'm running a WSL distribution. I will show you after my list of WSL, but if I show this one here, you can already see it, like there's a lot too much, but you can also see the Rancher desktop, for example, here. Okay, so I can start something.
How many WSL distros do you have?
Too much. Forget. That's why I don't want to always show something that is really, really nice. And now that's a little bit WSL here, but what the team did, and I love it, is that if I run a PS, okay, I'm running the normal init, okay, from WSL. That's all good. But then you will see that I have something called here WSL init. And normally I will see here I have supervised daemon let's say, process. And this one actually is from a process management from Linux, which is called OpenRC. So today, normally you have systemd, if you heard about it in the Linux world, but then you don't have only systemd. You have other process managers, and OpenRC is one. And what Rancher Desktop did is to actually implement OpenRC, not as speed1, as you could see. So it's a normal, let's say, WSL distribution, like a, let's say, legacy one or original one. But then they added the OpenRC through this WSL init script or process. So I really, really like it. So they went a little bit more than just creating some kind of distro, that it has something behind the scenes, which is really nice. Okay.
No. That means that they isolate the namespace for containerd as well inside the WSL to avoid another distribution to compete with that one. Because I think Docker Desktop is doing that, is isolating the containerd namespace, I mean, Linux namespace, to avoid another distro to.
Exactly. So you can have, let's say, it's the problem of WSL is that, again, even though it's different distros here, right, it's still one micro VM running behind the scenes. Okay, so one Linux VM, micro VM running, and then it pops up these other, let's say, super micro VMs, which is the WSL distros that we have here. The thing is, like, for Rancher Desktop, I'm not really sure, but yes, you cannot, let's say, interact with it if you don't have like the right namespace or something like that from the other distros like Docker Desktop, like you said. The thing is, like, to interact with it, then you have to have the tools that are actually shared, right? So when I do a Nerdctl here, what it will do is, like, okay, from Windows to the WSL distro, it will actually create a name pipe, npipe, okay, which is kind of sockets for Windows for the people coming from Linux. And this name pipe actually goes, and Nerdctl is now connected to the endpoint, which is WSL Rancher Desktop distro. So by doing this one, for example, I don't have anything. And then what I can now show, if I do images here, or the new syntax, then image list, I can find my two images that I add here, right? In the default, namespace. Okay.
And now that's the first difference from Docker. That's like Nerdctl is using containerd, and containerd you have namespacing. But one thing nice to say, Nuno, is that Nerdctl is a Docker CLI compatible CLI. Means that you have the similar commands, but you have more than Docker CLI.
You can just replace the Docker word for Nerdctl, that it will work, right?
Yeah, 90%. Not everything has been, let's say, passed on. And the inverse is also true, right? So Nerdctl, like George was saying, Nerdctl has, for example, one thing is called the lazy pooling, which you can actually do with Nerdctl, but you cannot do with Docker. So lazy pooling, like a Docker image, is made of different layers, right? So in Docker, before you can run your container, you have to have your image and all the layers in it. Lazy pooling actually allows you to get few of the principal layers, and your container can start, and then in parallel, it continues pulling the image. Okay, also. So this is is way too much above my knowledge, but that's something that really allows you to run bigger containers way faster. But yeah, it has like different technologies on it. If you want to look at Nerdctl, then just do it, and you'll be amazed about all the technology you have behind. And then Docker CLI has other parts like the plugins or not plugins but extensions that it has, like build kits, extensions. Now it's public, but you have extensions now and stuff like that, so you don't have it on Nerdctl. Okay, so here I just want to quickly do something. Is like if I pull Alpine, for example, it will pull the Alpine image, and here we can see Alpine is here. Okay, and from here,
Compose as well is still there.
So yeah, Nerdctl as if I just run Nerdctl, then Nerdctl, sorry. We have like app armor profiles. I don't know if it will really work here, but we do have like the management of containers, namespace, volumes, of course, the network. Again, like Fernando was saying, like if you do like an alias of Docker on Nerdctl, you potentially will be able to run it. Then it has compose, and here, because the command is not like a dash, for example, for Docker is the same. So this one, if I do something like this, no. Do I have version somehow? Do I have a version? There's no version. Okay, but I just wanted to show you that actually Nerdctl was using the V2 compose. Okay.
Okay.
Also, that's why. But yeah.
And Nerdctl is moving very fast as well. It's like,
yes,
there are people, a lot of developers working on that at the moment and bringing new features.
Like you said just before, Nerdctl. So this one is on containerd repo and Nerdctl. And here you can see you have like 60 contributors already. And then you can have a lot of documentation here, also how to install, how to use, and why they created this one, and so on. Okay, so Nerdctl is one of the really cool projects, definitively. It has also like a bit like Podman, which is the container manager from Red Hat. It has also a mode which is called rootless, where if you come from Linux, you don't need root. Okay, Docker has also this mode, right? But Nerdctl really made it quite simple to install and so on. But anyway, so here, so I could install something, and of course, if I do kubectl, then I will just get the services for now. If I get the services, you can see that I have quite a lot here, and I have my traffic load balancer running on my IP from actually the IP from WSL. Okay, so again, if I run the WSL, I'm not sure there's an IP there, but let's see. I will run Ubuntu instead, and I will do an IP ADDR. And can I do something like this, for example? Nah, of course not. I'm missing some option here, but that's okay. But anyway, so there's a lot, but then at 0 and 172, 226, and 161, and if I go here, that's the one. Okay, so it binds correctly. okay, directly to your IP, and now I have a load balancer. So load balancers are used mainly in Kubernetes. So you just have this entry point here, or load balancer and ingress, by the way. But you have these entry points alone, and then you don't care about exposing other services. You just add routes. So this one is the ingress on this time, right? But you just have a route that tells like, okay, if the message is or the URL is this one, then I will send this URL to potentially the APNIO service. Why not? Okay. But that's Kubernetes stuff. So let's continue. So here, what I wanted to show now is that if I come back to Kubernetes settings, I can go back now and enter dockerd. So it will restart. So this one will take about like maybe, I don't know, 1 minute or something like that to restart. Not even sure, but let's see. Okay, it's already checking the images and so on. So right now, if I do a Nerdctl info, okay, so the socket like is no more connecting to this file here, which is the socket file on the WSL distro. The WSL distro though is still running, right? So if I do this one, it should be running normally.
No, there's one nice thing I haven't seen because I wasn't using with PowerShell. Means that when you install Retro Desktop on Windows, they also give you like the Nerdctl on Windows.
Yes. Good point.
Only if you go on that WSL integration option here, that you can also enable this CLI inside like a WSL distribution that you want. Like Ubuntu or Suse, like WSL.
So yeah, it's not, yeah, exactly. It's not really encouraged. It's like Docker is the kind of the same. The goal here is to have your tools, your management console, and work from there. Every time that you mess up with the distro itself, to avoid that, and Docker Desktop does the same actually, is that it recreates let's say it recreates the distro. So like that, it avoids any external configuration done by us, for example, for any testing to be maintained and potentially break afterwards what they did behind the scenes, right? So the goal of these distros, I will call them like kind of system distros almost, is to be temporary. And whenever you restart the tool, in this case, Rancher Desktop, the distro is recreated. Okay, WSL allows it to be quite easy to create and delete distros. So I really like the idea of having this ephemeral distribution, where still I can go inside, right, like before, but at the same time, I'm okay. If I break something, I always know that just restarting it will just fix it. Okay, so it's taking a bit more time because, again, like I said, I'm always playing with my distros. I don't know if I have. No. Okay.
No, let's wait a minute. What I say is like if I have like if I already have WSL v2 installed and I'm using like Ubuntu or using Suse or using another distro, and I install Retro Desktop, I still can go on that WSL integration option there.
Yes, indeed.
Where I'm going to enable like the distro that I'm using. And when I do that, then I'm going to
exit.
To allow. I'm using
exactly
from that distro there.
Exactly. Let me actually Okay. I just restarted it because I guess I did some breaking things while playing with it as usual. So it's totally me. Again, that's not Rancher Desktop. If you don't, let's say, mess too much with it, you can just switch back and forth on containerd, dockerd, and that works perfectly. And the time here, normally we should see something that is way faster than just the other 3 minutes that was almost there. So let's wait just a little bit more here. And actually, let's do then the just for Fernando. Actually, I think that's my WSL instance that just crashed.
Can you run Windows containers with this Nerdctl?
That's a good question. No.
Oh, wait. Not here. Not with Rancher Desktop. Okay, Rancher Desktop has no Windows mode if you want. Okay, so Rancher Desktop, there's no Windows container runtime. Now, Microsoft and how do you say the Nerdctl team and containerd team actually worked very hard to bring Nerdctl for Windows with Windows containers. So right now I think it's kind of in beta or something like that. The main maintainer or the main contributor, is Aspen Wilder, I know. So
the James.
Yeah, it's James, exactly. Aspen Wilder.
Yes.
James Sturtevant, exactly. So he's the main person running behind this functionality. And I think it's kind of beta, almost release, almost. But again, it's by way, or let's say far from what Rancher Desktop does in terms of configuration and everything, okay? So it's not that simple. You will need to actually implement yourself the containerd for Windows and so on. But if you do that, potentially Nerdctl can run Windows containers.
Yeah, I was testing that with James Nuno, and he managed to. You can run a container, you can download the image, you can do like a Nerdctl PS, you know.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
But still more features to come. And like you said, you need the containerd runtime to be running on the Windows side as well. Mm-hmm. That's what Rancher Desktop is not creating, that runtime on Windows, because you cannot use the same containerd instance that's running on Linux. Has to be another one on Windows. If you do that, then Nerdctl can connect to that one, and then you have Nerdctl running on Windows side for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's why I mean, there's needs. Windows containers are something that is still being, let's say, actively developed. Now the use cases, of course, is always like a little bit more for companies, I guess. Like I don't see too much like Windows containers demos out there, unfortunately. I always see like companies needing them. Like if you have like .NET, for example, or IIS needs. Okay, IIS only runs on Windows currently. Like SQL Server, for example, runs on Linux also, and even Microsoft has been, let's say, almost making a lot of marketing around it. So you could run SQL Server on a Linux container. But IIS, for example, runs only on Windows. So if you need this type of containers, and again, IIS is more again used on companies and enterprises, right, rather than on the let's say public, I would say. Again, that's just a point of view. I don't say it's true. I just say like that's what I've been seeing. So the Windows containers, yeah, it's actively developed, but at the same time, yeah, the use cases are so niche sometimes that, yeah, maybe we are lacking a little bit of contribution there. Okay, so again, my WSL is totally effed up, my guess. Let me try to run a Docker info.
I think it's closed now. It's update and keep config.
No, but it has nothing to do with Rancher Desktop. As you could see, like my WSL is quite slow or something like that. But anyway, but now you can see that the Docker info that didn't work before now is working fine. Okay, and we can see the buildx, and here you can see the v2 of Docker Compose also being used, and the Docker scan by Docker Inc, which is like Sneak actually, but yeah. And here now, if I do images, I don't have the namespaces no more, remember? And if I do a Docker image ls, I will see everything. And for example, I have here a OpenSUSE tumbleweeds. So if I go to OpenSUSE tumbleweed, here it goes. Okay, and 594 is the ID. 594 is the ID. Okay, so again, the two are really aligned, and I really like that. And from here, actually, let's try to see if I do a scan. Well, it didn't scan, or there's a perfect, which I doubt, but let me try, yeah, bigger one here, for example. Yeah, I think the scan, I need to be connected to use the Docker scan, actually. It doesn't, I don't think you can use it when you are not connected, not logged in, not authenticated. I have to confirm that, but anyway. So, but here I can use Docker, and again, that's the normal Docker that we know. So Docker container run -- rm -- I don't know. Hello world, or yeah. Okay, and it's running. So now I am using Docker. So if I do a Nerdctl now, again, like before, right? If I just do a container ls, it says that I'm not connected. Okay. And even if I try to cheat here, so remember there's a concept of namespaces, right? I will try to call for moby, but again, it's not really connecting. Okay, which is by default what I was expecting also. So overall,
No, I have
yes.
a question. As Docker is using containerd as well, or is not?
Yes.
Is
so
the same containerd instance, or?
yes, yeah. So Docker is not okay. It's not the same instance. So if you do again a ps, I didn't run it. Okay, so let's.
Because was it rebuilt from scratch when you swap from containerd to dockerd to Docker daemon, was created from scratch.
Oh yeah, because I was doing it here. Sorry. Oh yeah, but it take okay. Like you see, like before I was connected here, right? And my WSL distro, when I decided to swap the container runtime, it actually killed it. So that was a good example without me wanting to show it like that. But okay, so here Oh, hey, here we go. The WSL integration, like I said, you can integrate them directly. For example, I integrate it with Penguin. So if I run it here, if I do a Docker, or let's say which Docker, and we can see that I'm using the Docker that is exposed from Rancher Desktop. Okay, so now if I do a Docker image ls, I will have again all my images, and again I will have my OpenSUSE at the top with the 594. Okay, so we do have the integration now. We can see it even better.
Yeah, that's nice. That's very similar to Docker Desktop, where they mount all the CLIs inside the WSL distros, and then you have the same commands and the same thing available.
Exactly. So yeah, but overall, one last thing that I will show you quickly that has been implemented with the 1.2.1 version is, oh, of course, yeah, it went away because I restarted it, but we have now the Rancher dashboards, okay, that is available. So Rancher dashboard is by default one of the, let's say, one of the dashboards to deploy, for example, the Rancher Kubernetes Enterprise, RKE2. But not only, is also like a management UI for Kubernetes, for other clusters, for cloud providers also, for example, and even more stuff that Rancher, Rancher, it's called Rancher Server now, but yeah, Rancher, like the dashboard is really incredible. In here, actually, you can see, for example, that I'm running on my machine. Okay, I have the IP here, for example, which version exactly of K3s I'm using. Okay, so 123.3, which is true. Okay, that's the one.
How did you open the dashboard?
So yeah, so you don't see it because I've but here on your primary icon or on the primary screen, you will have the small icon like this one. Okay, running
right,
here.
You have...
If you do a right click on it, you will see dashboard now. If you have the version 1.2.1, that's important.
I'm seeing, but mine is disabled. Because I'm not running Kubernetes.
Nuno, okay. Can you see that from the menu or not? From the menu, maybe? From the menu of the other one?
No, it doesn't. No.
This is on the data Rancher.
It's like it's the same as let's say Docker Desktop. You have some options, for example, to open from your small icon in the taskbar. Is the same here. So yeah. And here you can see a lot of things like more resources, for example. Yeah, so Linkerd has created some policies here. You can see them. But for anyone knowing how to work with the Rancher UI, right, the Rancher dashboard, then you will be at home again. So I think it's really nice because it really brings something that it's really helpful, specifically when you are running with Kubernetes and deploying some applications and trying to see what are the components that have been deployed, are your config maps correct or not, and so on. So it's really
nice.
Really, yeah.
I didn't see that before. I missed that, to be honest.
So again, someone at some point in time, I think it was Brett Fisher, that said, because he got the question a lot, and I think he answered very well. The two, like if you take Docker Desktop today and Rancher Desktop, the two, let's say UIs here, one is for configuration, and the other is for, let's say, management kind of, which is Docker Desktop. That's what you said just before. You can run containers from there. You can start the dev environments from there and so on. Here, you can really, let's say, configure in detail what you want. And then now, with the Rancher dashboard, now you have the management that you wanted, okay? For Kubernetes only, for K3S, right?
Yeah, not for, if you want to just use Docker, then
Exactly.
That's not
Exactly.
going to work. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
That's still nice. Still very nice. And yeah, it's a
So
nice
there's
option.
a last tool now for anyone that doesn't really like UIs and prefer still some command line. RDCTL, or our Rancher Desktop Control, I guess, is actually now available also from 1.1 version, 1.2.1 version. And here, for example, if I do a RDCTL list settings, I will see which version of RDCTL I'm running, or Rancher Desktop I'm running, and then the Kubernetes version, for example, how much memory. So the CPU and memory, of course, it's really helpful for Linux and Mac, actually. A bit less for WSL, because WSL, remember that you manage everything from the WSL config that you have in your home directory, okay? And in this one here, in this file, that's where you will set for the full WSL memory and CPU, okay? Where here, actually, RDCTL will manage the micro VM created by Lima, for example, for Linux and Mac, which is really, really nice. So you have a easier way to manage actually from a central point. Which container engine I'm running, which WSL integrations. Funny, it's empty, but that's okay. We don't really care if traffic is true or not. And yeah, and other things like that. So you can set afterwards, you can change your settings, for example. I didn't play with it, but there was a demo, for example, if you want to change the port, or if you want to change the version, for example, or even better, if you want to change the container engine. Let's actually do that. RDCTL, let me bring this one back here. And container D Docker, yeah, perfect. And now let's set then RDCTL sets, and then how it is. Beautiful. Look at this. Waiting on us. Container D. See, it switched. And that's it. So you can manage through a CLI some, and in the long run, I guess, all the settings that you can also manage from actually the UI.
That's nice for scripting configuration for like
Exactly.
machines.
And that's exactly the configuration bit was the one that brought the need actually.
Nice.
But yeah, I think for a first time, I think it's okay for us.
Yeah, sounds good.
Any question? Last question? Until the next time, of course.
Fernando, I think I put you on mute. If mute.
Yeah, Fernando is testing.
Sorry, I'm mute, yeah, but no, I'm testing here. So no, I changed. I started to use only Rancher Desktop, and I dropped the Docker Desktop. Congrats to the Rancher team. You are doing a nice job. And I like this dashboard. I'm playing with the dashboard right now. And thanks for sharing. And when you have some new cool resource, let's record. Let's make a new video, right?
Yeah, definitively. And again, it's just for the record. And again, I like to put things straight. It's myself, right? I like to be transparent. Docker Desktop is still an amazing tool being developed, and I encourage everyone to test it and to use it, if independent where you are. Okay, if just remember, if you are in a company that let's say certain rules apply about budget or persons working for the company, you need to subscribe to pay a subscription to use Docker Desktop. Okay, but if you are on your hobby time, if you are a student, if you are from a school, if you are from state, I think companies or something like that, you do not have to pay for Docker Desktop neither. Okay, so Docker Desktop is in one place, Rancher Desktop is growing, and for me, even though of course the similarities and the competition will potentially arise, I truly still think they are in a separate realm. The point of view of development for Docker Desktop is container first. The point of view from Rancher Desktop development is Kubernetes first. Okay, so already kind of we are not in the same. Rancher Desktop can still run without Kubernetes, K3S, all right, we saw it. Docker Desktop can run a Kubernetes vanilla, but can run a Kubernetes on it also. Okay, so of course the similar tools, kind of different initial purposes. Okay, and the technologies used behind are quite different. And anyway, as you saw, Rancher Desktop at some point in time uses dockerd also if you want to run Docker. Okay, just remember when you are pulling images from Docker Hub, then the Docker Hub limit rate is applied. Okay, so it's something different from the two products. Okay, the two products are running, and then you have Docker Hub on the top. Potentially you will need, I don't know, like GitHub container registry, which is the one that is growing in a lot of popularity. Congrats, Microsoft. And but then, okay, so you have that, but you have to decompose a little bit, like all the Legos that I have here. I like that. You have to decompose the bits and understand what corresponds to what. Okay, but you're totally right. I think Rancher Desktop is definitively a good competition, sane competition. So far, we are working with different open source projects also, like Nerdctl, Elm, Containerd, right? At the end of the day, we are working with them. So I really like that part. But again, Docker Desktop is also bringing a lot of innovation. So don't miss Docker Desktop simply because Rancher Desktop is here, right? And not miss Rancher Desktop because you have Docker Desktop neither. So
I understood, but my first opinion is Rancher Desktop is using less resource than my computer, and my computer is not powerful like yours, you know, and I need something robust to run in like a small computer. So now I will stick with Rancher, but I'll test again Docker in the future to see if they are improving, what they are improving. But cool. Thanks for your demo and for the explanation. I learned a lot here.
I'm glad.
Thank you, Nuno. Really appreciate. And if you're watching these and you have like any issue with Rancher Desktop, open a ticket for them. It's an open source project. If you are missing something on Nerdctl command line, you just go there, containerd Nerdctl, and open a ticket. And if you're missing something on the Windows, like Visual Studio Code integration, is something that is not really working yet with Nerdctl. It's something maybe Suse and Microsoft and we can work together. We are interested to make this, happen and work. And even with the Nerdctl team, to make sure that when you do like dev containers or remote containers on Visual Studio Code, you can use containerd and Nerdctl for that, and that works. I think still some edge case there, and let's see if that works soon, then later. But thank you, Nuno, again for joining. Hopefully can keep recording soon again.
Soon. There's a lot of projects out there, and even not Suse only, right? There's other projects that are coming, and it will be nice to have a look at them. Yeah,
you're still Microsoft MVP as well.
I'm still Microsoft MVP for now. Let's see. WSL is growing like crazy, so we can do another video about that.
That's for sure. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to stop recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.